Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Commodore. Glad everybody's watching. Hope you're having a good week. Lots of good weather in Maine. So today I've been binge watching, mind you, the TV show that was on Hulu. Of course, I've been watching it through a different streaming service, but called Handmaid's Tale. Okay, and I wanted to give a sort of some feedback, a review, whatever you want to call it, to that. So there is spoilers here. If you haven't seen it or you haven't read the original book from 1985, you may not want to watch this until, I don't know. Or you may want to if you have seen it, but please just know I'm going to be shooting off a lot of crap here that's going to spoil it for you if you had plans to watch that at some point. First of all, the Hulu version is very, very emotional, and let me just with the assistance here of Wikipedia, let me break down kind of what this story is supposed to be about. Okay. Handmaid's Tale is a futuristic dystopian novel by Canadian author Margaret Atwood, published back in 1985. It is set in a near-future New England, in a patriarchal, totalitarian, theonomic state known as the Republic of Gilead, which has overthrown the United States government. The protagonist, a woman named Offred, occupies the role of a quote-unquote handmaid woman who are forcibly assigned to bear children for high-status men. The story explores themes of powerless women in a patriarchal society, loss of female agency and individuality, suppression of reproductive rights, and the various means by which women resist and try to gain individuality and independence. The title echoes the component parts of Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, which is a series of connected stories, such as The Merchant's Tale and The Parson's Tale. It also alludes to the tradition of fairy tales, where the central character tells her story. This story, the book, won a 1985 Governor General's Award and the first Arthur C. Clarke Award. In 1987, it was also nominated for the 1986 Nebula Award, the 1986 Booker Prize, and the 1987 Prometheus Award. In 2022, The Handmaid's Tale was included on the Big Jubilee Read list of 70 books by Commonwealth authors, selected to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of Elizabeth II. This story has been adapted into a 1990 film, okay, and a 2000 opera, and of course the Hulu series and other media. There is a sequel novel that was published in 2019 called The Testaments. Okay, so that's the description, and I read that off of Wikipedia, okay, just so I could be more precise. Okay, yeah, there's Offred, O-F-F-R-E-D, okay. What it is if you're a woman who can bear children, you wear this red cloak and a white hat, okay? And you're given to a family that can have no children, and usually the families are people who are of the power structure of the government of Gilead, okay? So they call the husbands commanders and, you know, whatever, okay? And so they do this perverted thing where the husband will impregnate the handmaid, and she gives birth, and then afterwards she's then sent to another family to repeat the process over. You know what I'm saying? Now, I never read the book, okay? I never read the book, which I should have, I guess, I don't know. But they said the book really doesn't go as far as the Hulu series does. They say basically the first season of The Handmaid on Hulu is basically the book. And everything after that is stuff they've added to it by other writers or whatnot. So I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of the show. And it was on for 6 seasons. And then now they have a sequel series based on the Testament. They're going to be doing that very, very shortly. That's going to be put out. But my reaction, okay, first, if you're into these psychological kind of stories where the good guys and the bad guys kind of blur, okay, where there really is no distinction between the two in some cases, if you like those kind of stories, then this is for you, okay, because it's very psychological. It's not, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of horrific scenes, of course, on the TV show, but there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of spyness, a lot of secretive things going on, you know, a lot of rape, a lot of abuse, a lot of torture, a lot of things that, you know, that's why they gave it a TVMA rating, okay? So it is that vulgar in a way, okay? But I guess it's necessary in a way in order to frame this society, so that way you understand, you know, why it's such a nasty thing that's been done to the United States, okay, and why it's these religious fundamentalists here of, they say it's an offshoot of the book of Jacob or something like that. I don't really know. It's, you know, something like that. And these people have built their society, and they're at war with rebels trying to take back the United States, and Canada is sort of, they're not really fighting the United States, but they're not allied with them anymore either, so they're kind of more of a safe haven for people who flee Gilead and go to Canada, which is interesting, you know, coming from the author who is Canadian, who wrote this thing originally in 1985. So it is that kind of a story, you know, where it's very, very dark. Okay, now the 1990 movie was a little more insidious in a way, where it paints what looks like a rosy picture of Gilead, but underneath you could see the repression, you know, the suffering, the ridiculousness of it all. But in this version, the Hulu version, they don't hide anything about it. They show you what happens, okay, and it doesn't look rosy at all, okay. And because it focuses on the circumstances of primarily of one of the handmaidens, which is Offred, she goes through living hell on that fucking show, okay, living hell. And the one thing about it is that I find that's very kind of awkward in a way. Maybe it was designed to be this way. Is that if this society values women who are able to get pregnant so much, then these women would not be treated that way, okay? They would be treated like gold, because, you know, these people are like, you know, the people that are out there pro-life, okay? These people are all about the birth, right? You know, and there's no abortion allowed or anything like that. A lot of death penalties for a lot of different things in this fucking world. Okay. So this, you know, you would think that in a society such as that, there would be much more care taken to these women who are considered to be, hey, they're childbearing, because the world as a whole is noticing a decline in birth rates due to some unknown factor that I have no idea, which I guess says that that was what sparked this revolt against the government, which that doesn't make any sense to me, because if there's a problem, an issue like that that's affecting the whole world, you don't destroy your government in order to change the path of that. You invest in science and medical studies in order to address it, right? Changing governments doesn't do a damn thing. And all that this Gilead had done was just round up all the women that are still fertile, or whatever you want to call it, and bring them into the fold. That's it. Basically, like, let the rest of the world die. We're going to have all the, you know, women for ourselves. Well, that doesn't solve anything, really. Because if it starts, it will go into Gilead too. But, you know, I'm sidetracking, okay? So that part of it didn't really make much sense. What does kind of make more sense to me is the idea that these people are hypocritical, okay? They claim they're all about the, you know, having fertile women so we can have more children. That's important to them. At least that's what they say. But at the end of the day, when you're watching the show, it isn't really about that, because these men, these husbands, these commanders, okay, who are forcing themselves on women so they can have children, also going to brothels, okay? They're raping all kinds of other women out there who aren't even fertile, but they're having because they have power. They have power and status, and that seems to be more important to them than the fact that, oh, well, birth rates are down. They use that as an excuse in order to build Gilead, okay? They overthrew a government. They took away that power so they can replace it with their own. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. It's just a new bunch of people trying to control a nation. Okay, the idea that this is about, you know, trying to, you know, keep people, you know, having children and stuff like that is really, it's really the veneer they put up in front of the rest of the world to make it seem like what they're doing is so noble. But when you go behind the scenes, you're seeing that it's a brutal society where these women are treated like shit. Okay, they're beaten, they're tortured, killed. Okay, and if a society really gives a shit about children and wants to see more births, then they wouldn't be doing that to these women, because the fact is these women actually have more prominence than they even give credit for, because these women could write their own ticket, you know, saying, you know, if we revolt, you guys aren't going to have any babies at all. Okay, and then how long is your Gilead going to last then? So these commanders are very stupid by thinking that they control these women, but in the course of the TV show, you're going to find out that these women can cause a great deal of upheaval in the government, okay? Simply because, hey, you know, they're that valuable, and nobody wants to kill off the goose that's laying the golden eggs, right? But that's what Gilead's doing, and that's why, you know, it eventually is not going to last. You know, quickly it's going to fall down. So what you're doing in this TV show is you're following the life of, well, it kind of flashbacks a lot, which I hate. I hate a story that does a lot of flashbacking, okay? If you've got a story to tell, start at the fucking beginning. If all of that flashbacking means something that's going to come up later on, then we should have read all about that before we jumped into the rest of the story. You know, I hate that. TV shows do that a lot now. It's sort of like, oh, maybe we should do this, and it's sort of like last minute decision that, oh, maybe we should just add this flashback in here just to make this scene more relevant. No, you start at the fucking beginning. You start, you know, how many years before the birth of Gilead? Bring it in there. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, even in fucking Star Wars, they didn't do any flashbacking when they started it in episode 4. Okay, they just started the story there. They didn't do any flashback in there. Okay, you got a little bit of background through the dialogue from the characters, but they didn't go back to Anakin, you know, and all that. Okay, they didn't do any of that shit. So I don't like when TV shows and movies do that. I want to see the story at the beginning. I don't care if it's boring or anything like that. If it's worth the pesos to see the whole damn thing, and at the end the payoff, that's the way it should be. Okay? But, you know, people in Hollywood underestimate the audiences. And with a TV show, you shouldn't have to. Because you don't have like 2 hours to tell a story. You got all the seasons you want to make out of it to tell the story entirely and in detail. So take the time to do it right. Okay? So anyway, like I said, a lot of flashbacks. And they show Offred before she was named Offred, okay? And then she's like just a teenager, I guess like 18 or 19 years old, just starting off in life. This is before, but you know, there's like signs that things were starting to get wacky in the government and stuff like that. And you know, she's trying to make a living and stuff, and then all of a sudden there's a bombing in Washington D.C. and the president's killed and Congress is killed, and then all of a sudden things start happening. You know, that's kind of the setup, okay? They could do all that in just a handful of episodes, but they chose not to do that. They just jumped you right into the thing. So you got to keep up with it. If you're going to watch the Hulu show, you're going to have to pay a close attention. They don't do much de-aging, so that way you can keep up with, oh, we're in the past, oh, we're back in the present, we're in the past, okay? They don't do that enough. They don't do it well enough. So because these I don't know, maybe it's they couldn't afford to do the de-aging effect or the makeup or whatever. I don't have no idea. So you have to pay attention to where you are. And this goes on throughout the fucking series, okay? So it's very annoying. At a certain point, you're going to get annoyed with it, just like I did. So yeah, anyway, they show her getting rounded up with a bunch of other women. They're sent to what I would describe as a religious school, okay, run by a nut. Okay, her name is Aunt Lydia, or at least Aunt is considered a rank in this organization. So her name is Lydia, who used to be a preschool teacher and a judge for family issues and stuff like that. And she evolves into this demented old bitch who beats the shit out of women, you know, with cattle, you know, electric sticks, you know, the cattle prods and stuff. She uses that as a weapon all the time. She actually takes the eye out of a fucking girl who, you know, they grabbed off the street, and they're trying to turn her into one of these handmaids, okay? Don't ask me how they know in advance that these girls are fertile. Okay, they're just grabbing girls everywhere, but they don't know if they're fertile or not, and they just immediately turn them into handmaids. So it's like, okay, well, somewhere along the way there's a process where they find out these girls can have children. So Offred is one thing, because she already had a child before she got captured and sent into this bullshit thing, okay? So they knew she was able to have kids. I could see that. But some of these other girls, they look way too young to even have kids, for anybody to know if they could have children. So I, you know, like I said, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing of the story they don't really get into too much detail about. Anyway, they spend, I don't know how much time, a year, 2 years, whatever, in the school, and this Lydia runs all the handmaids. She's always coming back into the picture all the time to discipline this one or discipline that one, you know, or you're not doing your job, or I'm gonna beat the hell, you know what I'm saying? She's always there, like fucking Hitler. Okay, so for Offred, she ends up with a family that has a guy named Fred, I guess. That's why they call her Offred, Fred. And his wife, Serena, is a troubled woman who started off with her husband as, you know, like sort of an activist, trying to get people to, you know, join with their religious cause to try to save the world and bring babies back into it or something, or to raise the birth rate. Okay. And we meet up with her, and she's not happy. She doesn't have a child. She can't have children. At least at that point, she can't have children. And so Offred is given to them. And I guess, you know, because the husband has to rape Offred in a religious style kind of ceremony with his wife present, his wife can't stand it. She don't like it, okay? I guess it's the first time that she's had to go through this with her husband, and it leaves a bitter taste in her mouth. And she resents Offred for it. And Offred, for some reason, you know, seems to make the commander gaga over her, you know, or something. He likes her, and she knows this. Serena knows this, and that pisses her off even more. So she hates Offred, okay? But when she finds Offred's pregnant, all of a sudden she's got to treat her nice and everything, even though Offred knows that she's not liked. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that kind of shit going on throughout the whole fucking series. Is this, we know, you know, but we can't do it. You know what I'm saying? They just hate each other, but they don't show it. They can't. They're not allowed to, at least, you know, for the time that she's pregnant, until she has the child. After that, it's no holds barred, you know. But it's pretty demented in a way that this society has even existed as long as it has, because they control the military, a good chunk of it. So it's not like an easy government to topple by any other country, because they got nukes, they got all the fucking modern day weapons, you know, missiles, rockets, choppers, tanks, they got all that shit, okay? So they are a powerhouse militarily speaking, and so even though, you know, Gilead doesn't control all of the country, they control about I guess a third of it really is under their rule. The rest of it is still rebel-controlled areas. They're still fighting back. So, with Offred being in this house, she goes through 4 years of living hell. And when I say 4, I mean like 4 seasons. Hulu, okay? So a season is considered a year on the show. So she goes through 4 years of hell with this couple here. Okay? And it's turning her into this vicious person. Everybody calls her selfish all the time. You're selfish. You did this and you got this person killed, or you did that and you got these people killed. You're selfish. And the funny thing of it is they're all selfish. Every one of these characters is selfish to varying degrees. Everybody's got an agenda. It ain't just Offred. It's Serena. It's her husband. Okay, it's the bitch at the fucking school anyway, where she was taught to be a handmaid. Everybody's got a fucking agenda in this show. So everybody is selfish, and everybody will do anything to hang on to what they got, or to gain something they don't have, and they don't care who they step on to get to it. Even Serena. Okay, Serena will throw her husband under the bus at some point in the show. Okay, just so she can have the thing she wants the most. Okay, and you know, temporary friendships are made, and then they turn angry. You know what I'm saying? So you can't always be on anybody's side. People, even Offred, will do heinous things to get what they want. Now, a lot of people can excuse in Offred's case because she was abused so much, and it's made her angry, bitter, combative, rebellious. Okay, and so, you know, people say, well, who can blame it? But it's very odd that people would call her selfish when everybody that's calling her that is also being selfish in varying ways. Okay, sometimes even against the betterment of Gilead. So, to me, I think the name of this fucking story ought to be called Selfishness. You know, a story of the Handmaids. Okay, that's what this is about. Everybody is selfish in this story. Everybody. Nobody's a saint. Okay? Certainly not the commanders, who or on, you know, publicly saying, oh, we're holy and everything, and we value the handmaids, and then as soon as the cameras are off or that people aren't looking, they're running to Boston to the local strip club or something like that, and, you know, being piggish as men often are. Okay, so it never matters to men. Men's foolishness will always remain the same no matter what kind of government you build. Okay, they're always going to be that way, even though the women expect the men to be everything they say they're going to be. Okay, they're still dealing with the same shit. Oh, my husband's running around with somebody. Okay, that's always going to be the story, no matter what. I don't know how much of that goes into the book. Like I said, season 1 of The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu is basically the book, from all accounts that I've read. After that, season 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's all on Hulu and the other writers who built on that story, on that book. Okay, they've been building on that for 5 years now, and since Atwood has created the sequel, The Testaments, they're going to build onto that. Okay, so like I said, I guess you could say, I mean, yeah, she created it. It's sort of like when Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek, and you had a bunch of other writers building on that. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay. She created this world, and Hollywood's building on it, okay? And they've tried many different times. Like I said, they did one in 1990. It was just a movie, 2 hours, I guess, or whatever. It didn't get too much, I don't know. It came and went. I don't even remember that movie coming out in the theater, okay? It had some good stars in it, though, but I don't remember anybody really talking about it. Probably because it didn't make much sense, because they didn't give it the attention and the detail that it deserved. As movies often do that are based on books. The books always are better reads than the fucking movie is to watch, okay? So, in a way, it's good that Hulu has taken the initiative to do the story and do it right, you know, to really get into it, so that way you get some idea. Of course, they turn the heat up a little bit on Offred, so that way her character looks more vulnerable, looks more abused, okay? Because they really want to show you that this is not a society that people would want, okay? And I think it's apparent, you know, within the first 6, 7 episodes, you're gonna know that, yeah, this is not an ideal society. This shit, you know, if birth rates were so, in reality, if they were declining and stuff like that, nobody would be trying to topple governments. They would be demanding their governments fund medical research to combat it. Okay, that's what they would want. Okay, it certainly, I don't think it would spark a religious uprising to overthrow the government. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, a lot of times when people write futuristic type of stories, certain elements are never explained, and they're trying to create a world to start the story, and they don't really go into much detail as to how this world ever came to be. And I bring up Star Trek again because in the same sense, Gene Roddenberry doesn't give you a day-by-day detail of how the Earth went from near total destruction to basically a utopian kind of world. Okay, it doesn't give you that. It just says that one day it's going to be that way. However we get there, whatever. Okay, it doesn't really matter. You know, and so, you know, they don't really give you that much detail. It's not important, I guess, in their eye to explain it. It's more important to show it, okay, so people can feel hopeful or something. But, you know, of course, this story here with the Handmaids is not a hopeful look of the future. It's a warning of, you know, if you let religious elements take too much control of your society, you could end up seeing some of this. You know, you could end up seeing some of this kind of shit that you see in this. And so we've got to be careful. You know, religion oftentimes is very, very strict, and they demand strict obedience. I mean, they can't help it. I mean, even I could see that too, even in, you know, when I grew up Catholic. I mean, they expect you to really believe all these things, okay, that they teach you and stuff like that. That's strictness. But they won't provide you any evidence or anything like that. They just expect you to have the faith. Have faith, you know, put a blinder on. Don't ask questions, just believe it, okay? Well, ain't that kind of the same thing with magic? They ask you just to forget the questions, just enjoy the magic. Well, some of us who are very inquisitive, and we should all be inquisitive, want to know how this stuff works. Okay? We want to know. We know nobody has a magic ability to bring whatever things out of dead air into reality, okay? We know this, so we know there's a trick. We want to know what the trick is, but they won't tell you. They just want you to be entertained. I kind of look at religion in the same way. It's like they don't want you to ask too many questions about this. They just want you to believe in faith that it's that, okay? And I was never that way. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I just can't do it. You know, I'm too curious about things. You know, I always want to know why people think about this the way they do. Why does this work? Okay, why is it when I push the button on this fucking thing here that TV will turn on or something like that? What does that? What triggers that? I can't just blindly say, oh, push the button and it comes on. Okay, and just leave it at that. No. Okay, I think of all the things that my father taught me, it was that. But I don't think he really intended for me to learn that, because he worked with electronics. And for every problem that he would get from people that were bringing in TVs, radios, stuff like that, he'd have to track down the cause. And to be able to do that, you have to understand how things work, you see. To fix it, you have to know these things. And so I learned through him that you just don't take blind faith that things work because an action equals a result. There's a medium there. And you should know that medium and remember it, because it explains a lot. It keeps you from falling prey to bullshit, okay? And when you stop being inquisitive and stop trying to figure out the details of things, you're just blindly walking through life with your head in the clouds, and you don't know what the hell's going on or why things are happening, okay? And I see that a lot in the way people think about politics and stuff like that. There's just too much of that. And religion, like I said, is just a lot of that, and it gets boring to me. It's just boring. Lots of routine, lots of repetitiveness, and lots of pretending things are what they say it is. I can't do that, okay? You're asking me to put aside intelligence. You're asking me to demoralize myself in a way, not to wonder, okay? I can't. You know, it's impossible for me. It's like asking me to hold my breath for 10 minutes. I mean, I can't do it. All right? I just can't. And so there's a lot of that with science fiction, unfortunately, where, like I said, they don't explain how these worlds get created in their minds, but you're expected to just accept that, you know, there could be, you know, a day like this. It might not resemble it entirely, but it could happen. And yeah, if you take just certain elements of the story of The Handmaid's Tale, and you could say, yeah, that could probably happen, or this part could probably happen. But overall, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense that it could all happen the way she's laid it out. And I'm not saying that she should know better, but I'm just saying a writer's a writer. They're trying to create a stage that people will act on, okay? And in that medium, that stage, those characters, they're trying to tell us lessons, okay? That's how you educate the people that way, or make them think, inspire thought. And this TV show, The Handmaid's Tale, does a great deal of that, which that's the part about that show that I like, is it makes you think. It makes you think about humanity. It makes you think about what drives us. Are we all selfish? Do we all have things that we want and we'll get at whatever the cost? Okay? And I just think that, you know, it says a lot about people, especially in a very extreme situation, which this story is, a very extreme example of how people will be, how their real nature will be brought to the surface with force. Okay, it shows you that people can become very narrow-minded and very task-oriented, whether you're the victim or the person making the problem. Okay, you know, it's very eye-opening. And they got a lot of good actors in this show. I have to say, they picked a really good set of actors in there. Some American, some Canadian, and like I said, if you're into kind of shows like that, that is something to watch. Okay, and I think that I don't know what like I said, I haven't read the book. Maybe I ought to read the book, because there could be things in that book that weren't even put into Hulu, because that sometimes will happen too in the Hulu version or whatever. The Testament is already out in the libraries and bookstores and stuff, so you can grab both copies of The Handmaid's Tale and the Testament and read them. But I would imagine, you know, Hulu's version of it is going to go into more detail, probably into more than what is in the book. Okay, so yeah, anyway, so I would say that the show gets an A minus or something like that from me. It's very good, a story. You don't want to think too much about what it took to get to this point for this story to begin. Okay, you don't want to think too much about that. What you really should be focused on is these characters and their selfish motives. Okay, and how extreme situations bring the worst out of us, so we can get what we want. Okay, and like I said, there's really no. The good guys and bad guys are really blurred in this thing, so you don't really know how good someone's going to be until they're confronted with something and they do something terrible. Okay, so yeah, it's just I think that's a more real depiction of people in a way. Good guys can't always be good, bad guys can't always be bad. You know, there's a limit to even what they're capable of. So yeah. Anyway, that's my review of The Handmaid's Tale from Hulu, the TV show. And so I hope everybody enjoys it if you haven't seen it and you decide you want to watch it. And I hope you didn't watch this first, but but I hope you enjoy it, because I think it's worth the watch, and it's very addictive. I think if you're gonna binge watch it like I did, you're not gonna want to stop. Because it leaves you, like every episode kind of leaves you with a cliffhanger sort of thing, where it keeps you riveted and that, you know what I'm saying? So you're gonna need a lot of coffee or something like that. But I wouldn't recommend it. I would say, look, you can watch 5 or 6 episodes maybe, but don't push it, because you're gonna throw your whole timing off. Your internal clock is gonna get all screwed up. Just take your time, watch it, absorb it, think about it, maybe get something out of it. I don't know, just do that. So I'll talk to you guys later, and be nice to each other out there. Take care, everybody. Bye.